Thanks for joining us, everyone. We're really grateful to have you attending our session today. I want you to imagine for a moment that the landscape that your brand operates in is completely being tipped on its head. I'm talking about new entrants from both the big players as well as small niche brands that are nipping at your heels, a completely different pricing landscape than you're used to operating within, and some truly disruptive innovation that's making waves within your category. How confident would you be about making decisions for your brand's path forward based on traditional market research alone, those tried and true methods to test innovation, pricing, and so forth? What if we could tell you that you could have a crystal ball that would help you understand not only what's happening today in your space, but also how the changes that you're making today could impact your brand 6 months from now or 12 months from now? Today I'm joined by Laurence Duhamel-Gavel, who's Marketing Intelligence and Strategy Lead for the Premium Waters business at Nestlé Canada. This includes icons like Perrier and San Pellegrino. And we're going to take you through all the ins and outs of a case study on how Nestlé found themselves in just that situation. My name's Marcie Connan, and I'm an Executive VP of Client Service at Dig Insights. By way of introduction, Dig is unique in that it brings together research, insights, strategy, foresight, along with a great tech and data science team to really help our clients chart their way to better success in market. We were founded back in 2010 by a small group of senior researchers and now have a team of over 250 experts who are servicing clients globally from our offices in Toronto, Chicago, and London. One of our most differentiated technologies is our Upside platform, which was really built by researchers for researchers to help companies shift the way that they approach their innovation life cycle, from early stage screening to optimization, to the validation of those ideas before they go to market. And it's this really combination of the research expertise and the tech side that has really positioned us as a leader when it comes to research innovation, and innovation in terms of how we tackle the challenges that surround innovation for our clients. We're proud to be on the GRIT list of the top 10 most innovative companies for the past several years now, and really appreciate that recognition from our clients and our peers alike. We've had the pleasure of working with Nestlé for almost a decade now, and it was really that spirit of innovation that brought our two brands together. We've worked with Nestlé from early stage screening right through to these large, complex, multi-brand portfolio projects and everything in between. And we've done it on categories that's really run the gamut, from essentials like water, and coffee, to those more niche categories like infant nutrition, and even in the health science space with health and wellness projects, nutritional supplements, and so forth. And we've had the pleasure of working on a number of brand icons as well. Certainly everyone knows the name Perrier and San Pellegrino, but Nestlé has an incredible portfolio of brands, including ice cream, chocolate, and we have a few Canadian exclusives on the chart there as well for our Canadian colleagues. I highly recommend you try Aero or Coffee Crisp if you ever make your way north of the border. As experts in innovation, we have a unique point of view on what it takes to truly be successful when it comes to innovating. And that's the idea that we have to move beyond being consumer-centric to being truly decision-centric. I think we can all agree that the pace of change is just accelerating in all the categories that we experience day to day. Consumer centricity is important, yes, and I'm sure you'll hear some great talks this week about how we can really root our work in understanding what customers want, how they think, what they need from us, the importance of developing empathy for our consumers, and there's no doubt that that is important. But it's only helpful if it drives action and outcomes for your brands. We believe that you have to really move from this consumer-centric to more decision-centric innovation. And that means understanding how consumers make decisions, identifying all the different opportunities that you have at your fingertips to tip those decisions in your favor, being able to reliably predict and estimate how those changes will ultimately impact decisions at shelf. And importantly, one element that often gets kind of overlooked when we're talking about methodologies and the process of innovation, being able to drive decision-making for your internal stakeholders as well, so that they can have the courage to take those leaps and try new things. So that's what we mean by decision-centric innovation. It's innovation, but just developed with that consistent lens of how do you affect behavior ultimately in favor of your brands. And this decision centricity starts with a more holistic view of what we mean by innovation. We think of it as any change that's going to shift a consumer's decision in your favor. Now, certainly that includes product innovation. Quite often that's where we first go, right? What's the next new thing we're gonna put out there? What's the next new flavor, the new texture, the new item? But it can also include messaging, how we're communicating about our brands, the claims and benefits. It can include packaging, not just the size or configuration of our packs, but the actual format itself. And it can include pricing. Of course, innovation doesn't always go hand in hand with pricing, but it's one of those elements that we can draw from, whether that's regular pricing or promotion pricing. So when we challenge our traditional view of what is innovation, it can really open us up to unconventional and often impactful strategies for our brands. So today we'll look at how this framework and this way of thinking really set the stage for an impactful reset within the sparkling business at Nestlé.
You know, as a leading global food and beverage company, Nestlé cares a lot about what drives consumer decisions. Everyone who touches our products and our brands, from those who develop it all the way to those who sell it, aim to keep the consumer at the core of any of their business decisions. And so we do need to have that holistic understanding of what's driving those decisions to support our innovation and commercialization process at every stage. Today, I'll take you through an example of where we've done that on our premium waters portfolio, where we look to revamp our offering under Perrier and San Pellegrino, essentially delivering better on consumer needs, but also driving business growth. So the sparkling water and the beverage aisle in general has exploded in the last few years. This is especially true in Canada, where just 5 to 6 years ago, our sparkling water aisle was essentially a small handful of premium brands, including Perrier and San Pellegrino. Today, we find ourselves, there's dozens of new brands, big and small, offering, products at every price range. And it's really fundamentally changed the dynamics of our category. Consumers expect more now, more innovation, more formats and flavors, more price options that fit their needs. And so, we're in Canada, where Perrier and San Pellegrino were kind of comfortable for many, many years, we needed to understand this disruption a little bit better. And we needed to relook at our entire portfolio, ensuring that we still have what it took to deliver on these evolving consumer needs and expectations. When we started this project, the business team came to me with a whole bunch of questions to answer all at once. We have premium brands. How do we maintain that premium positioning in light of some of this new competition? Do we have that right portfolio? Do we have the right innovation pipeline and the right formats? Are there any SKUs that work a little bit harder for us that we could focus in on a little bit more? And so I needed a way to provide that holistic assessment of our entire portfolio and come out with a clear recommendation that would get alignment from the entire organization, from our global stakeholders in Europe, all the way down to, of course, our sales team on the ground, and of course, our retail partners. And we did just that. So leveraging insights that helped us predict consumer behavior in the aisle, we put in motion a plan to optimize our portfolio, delivering on those consumer needs and also driving business objectives all at once. The insights that we gained helped us identify which of those SKUs work really, really hard and were must-have for consumers. And it also helped us identify those that maybe weren't bringing the value that they needed to. This actually led us to discontinue 2 entire sub-brands under San Pellegrino and Perrier in Canada and remove our large Perrier glass bottles from the shelves. Big decisions, pretty bold, a little bit scary, but we were able to do it with the confidence that we'd be able to recoup that volume elsewhere thanks to the insights that we had gained from our virtual market study. We also made some format changes. We changed the format of our cans on Perrier. We found that consumers actually would prefer to have fewer cans if they were bigger, so that was a pretty easy switch, actually delivering 33% more volume to consumers. And along with some of these portfolio changes, we gained a better understanding of the pricing and promo dynamics, and so together that helped us shift towards a more healthy profit margin. And lastly, we filled our 3-year pipeline for both San Pellegrino and Perrier, including the launch of 2 new Perrier flavors just last year, ginger lime and raspberry, which were very popular in Canada. I think if you want ginger lime, though, you're going to have to come north of the border to check it out. It's pretty tasty.
Okay, so how did we get there? It was really important that we framed our methodology and our approach here in an understanding that impulse is everything. It's funny, earlier today I was reflecting on my very first Quirks conference a few years ago, and I think Daniel Kahneman was the unofficial co-presenter for virtually every session that day as his book Thinking Fast and Slow had just came out. Everyone was talking about System 1 thinking, and things haven't changed over the years. I think it's almost more important now to think about how we're tapping into that more subjective, unconscious decision making, just given the amount of SKU proliferation that we're seeing, and the fact that consumers have essentially access to endless aisles of products in the e-commerce space. Consumers spend far less time thinking about innovations and thinking about those choices than we often ask them to do in research. Also, we have to appreciate that decisions occur in context. No one is buying anything, whether online or in a physical environment, when they're not privy to a number of different choices. In fact, the decision to purchase one product is almost always a decision to reject dozens, if not hundreds, of competing products. But it's surprising how often research kind of ignores that fact, whether that's doing monadic testing, where we're going really deep on one idea at a time, or sequential monadic testing, or even approaching our testing of innovation in a really siloed manner. Yes, here's one study on packaging, and then we're going to do something else on pricing, and then we'll look at flavors. That's something different. Let's break that up. Really, the more we can bring all those pieces together into one dynamic component, the more predictive it can be. And also, we understand that attitudes don't necessarily predict behaviors. Laurence mentioned the decision to delist the 1-liter glass bottle of Perrier, which was one of the most iconic SKUs within the mix. If we had asked consumers what they thought about that decision, they would have said hard no, like thou shalt not get rid of that SKU. If we had asked them about preferences or receptivity to plastics, no, there would have been a revolt. So the question isn't what you think of this or how likely are you to buy this one. The question really is, if that was to disappear from the shelf today, how are you ultimately going to act? Now, Laurence mentioned that there were a number of different questions coming at her from her stakeholder group. And with the virtual market methodology that we'll introduce you to today, one of the real benefits is the ability to tackle all of these different dynamics within a single study. Yes, it was important to look at SKU mix, new products, new flavors, some of those classic innovation elements. That was really important here. But we also had a lot of dynamics with the packaging at play, from the size of the packaging, the configuration of multi-packs, the format itself. Is it glass, plastic, aluminum? What's that right mix? And this was all compounded by the fact that it wasn't just one brand in play. It was San Pellegrino as well as Perrier, and the various sub-brands and potential sub-brands that were in the mix as well. Ladder on top of that, the pricing element. We looked at both the regular pricing, feature pricing, as well as the depth of discount and the frequency of discount. So to do this, we needed a tool that was flexible enough to handle hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of permutations of what this Nestlé assortment could look like on the shelf ultimately. And that's where this virtual market approach comes in. It's a little different than traditional innovation testing in really 4 ways. First, coming back to that element of impulse and the context required for consumers to make decisions, this study is really rooted in findings based on behavior. What do consumers actually do in that moment of truth, given the options available to them? The results are actually delivered in the language of business as well. No top 2 box scores or performance versus norms here. And it provides optimizations and the ability to play with scenarios so we can really experiment with the best path forward. And finally, with the ability to model these future scenarios and even anticipate how the competition might react to the changes that we make, the shelf life of the research is extended quite a bit. So with virtual market, you'll see that respondents are essentially immersed in a real shopping experience. This is a little video of the interface here. Ideas are presented in context with the full competitive set. They're allowed to click in, take a peek at different products that grab their attention, but no single innovation is given any undue attention here. Their job is simple. Imagine you're shopping, let's say at a Walmart. You're going to buy some sparkling water. Go to it. So essentially, consumers go through, they can pick up a product, take a look at the sizing, the pricing. Sometimes these products will be on sale. Sometimes they won't be. Sometimes products that they might expect to see at shelf won't be there. In other scenarios, there might be new innovations, and all these are dynamically playing. Of course, behind the scenes, we're essentially experimenting with all those different configurations. But for the respondent, it feels incredibly intuitive. They're often making these decisions very quickly. And all of the forecasting that we conduct is based on the decisions that consumers are making in the moment. We're then calibrating that to the current base case, what's happening today in market. We know the unit volume, we know the revenue volume, we understand those dynamics. So from there, we can project how any change impacts how the consumer behaves, and what that means right down to the unit volume and dollar revenue volume for your brand and every other brand and SKU in the market.
This is what makes this methodology so powerful to us, right? We're essentially putting consumers in that exact same mindset as when they're actually standing in aisle making those decisions. And then we're able to test out and kind of tweak pretty much every variable that we would have control over. So we customize our virtual markets by channel, which allowed us also to then, tailor our strategy to each of our different retailers, with the understanding that when a consumer or a shopper is standing in an aisle in a conventional grocery store, they might be making different trade-offs and different decisions than when they're standing in a club store.
So for that reason, virtual market is essentially a move away from those traditional concept testing metrics that I mentioned and toward results in the language of the business. Of course, the real heroes here are the unit volume projections, the revenue volume projections, and also data that can give the team a clear story around the profitability as they start to experiment with things like pricing and pack size. There's also some metrics that are notably absent here. So as I mentioned earlier, you're not seeing a purchase intent score, anything related to top two box, performance versus means or norms or benchmarks. While those can be, particularly interesting for researchers, they're not always compelling for stakeholders and for business planning. This type of research also supports a real deep dive into source of volume. That can include incrementality, growth for your brand and your portfolio, or growth for the entire category overall, which is particularly exciting to marketers and to customers as well. And also in the source of volume, there's an element of cannibalization. As you're making these changes, what proportion of that volume is actually just cannibalized from your own SKUs, your own partner mix, and what's coming from your competitive audience? And the best part is that while it's rooted in these best business metrics, it's proven to be highly predictive of in-market results as well.
Focusing on these actual business outcomes instead of purchase intent. And I will say we haven't thrown purchase intent out the window. We still use it when it's relevant. But focusing on the business language has really helped us make our insights and learnings more accessible across our entire organization. In a project like this one, we really needed our entire cross-functional organization to understand, feel confident in this data, and ultimately incorporate it into their growth models as well. And so there's nothing better to get your sales team excited about an innovation that you want to put out into the world than giving them actual category growth metrics and unit volume projections.
Okay. So these business metrics come to life in two different ways with a virtual market project. One way that it comes to life is what we call an optimization. So in this example on the left, again, this is just illustrative. This isn't real Nestlé data. But imagine that we're looking at the grocery channel here, and our client accounts for about 1/4 of the unit volume in that market, almost 10 million units. With optimizations, we're really taking a macro view to say, okay, of those hundreds of thousands of combinations of how we could show up for consumers, what is the single best way to go to market to drive the most unit volume for our brand? Now, the best scenario can take a few different forms. In this case, it's unit volume. We want to get as many units as possible for our brand. And with this unit optimized mix, we can say, okay, if you do these 10 things, tweak your price here, add innovation there, delist this, et cetera, you can actually grow to 13 million units. Pretty powerful. But the best scenario can also be defined in terms of revenue. How do we drive the most dollars? Maybe there's an opportunity to maybe give up the units a little bit, but drive more dollars for our portfolio. Or sometimes it's category growth that's the target. We really need to lift this category up if we're going to stay relevant. We need to get customers on side with that story. The other way that we can kind of bring this to life for our clients is through what we call scenarios. So think of this as more of that micro view. If we want to isolate a single change, we can show instantly what does that mean for our business. So in this example, imagine that again, our client's sitting with almost 10 million units, and they've got 2 different opportunities to look at, let's say, a price strategy for a particular brand. You can see instantly that scenario 2 is the way to go here. It's far more successful for the client on all metrics, including unit volume, profitability, and revenue. The nice thing about these optimizations and scenarios is that they don't kind of exist on an island. You're not looking simply for the mathematically best scenario, but we have the opportunity to put some guardrails around this, some rules to make sure that, yes, we want to drive success as much as possible, but we want it to still be reasonable and feasible for the business. So quite often we'll put some rules in place. Yes, we want the best unit revenue and revenue volumes for our client, but we would never delist a particular SKU, or product A always has to be priced at a premium to product B. Or sometimes it's more customer driven. A customer will not introduce a new sub-brand unless there are at least 3 SKUs in the mix. So we can put those guardrails and those rules in place so that the outcome is meaningful and it won't only resonate with consumers, but it'll resonate with the business and the customers as well.
I think in our project, we gave the DIG team about 20 or 30 different scenarios to run and what ifs. The team pulled the business as a whole, and I got a very long list of, what if we were to just exit a channel entirely, hypothetically? What would happen to the category? What happens if we were to take these global innovation platforms and launch them in Canada? Would they be successful, or would they cannibalize our existing portfolio? Which of our brands are more likely to be able to withstand a price increase, and how high before consumers stop seeing the value? So a lot of questions, but leveraging the data from the virtual market, we're able to visualize the impact of each of these scenarios that would have on our business and on the category. We actually ended up, so far we've implemented a few of these scenarios. The plan is still in progress, but so far the actual in-market results have been very close to what the model predicted. And the reason, I think, is really because, again, this is grounded in real consumer decisions and calibrated to in-market sales.
With each of our virtual market projects, we also deliver a custom simulator to clients where they can actually go in and play with the data in those scenarios themselves. This is a bit of an eye chart. It's not a test, I promise, for those sitting in the back row. But what's happening here is every row in this simulator represents a SKU that's either in market today or was on our potential innovation list. So you can see that with a click of a button, you can essentially add a product into the category, take a product out, and in real time, you're seeing how each of those changes impacts right down to the unit and revenue volume, every single SKU that's part of that particular channel or mix. You can do the same with price points. Add some premiumization to your pricing, perhaps take a higher price with more frequent discounting. All of these elements are at play and can be just calculated essentially in seconds. Because we have these real-time scenario forecasting, it really kind of extends the life of the research in a couple of different ways. One, it can actually support really customer-specific storytelling for your team as well. Laurence mentioned that we'll often look at particular channels, let's say conventional grocery, club, maybe small store. How many times has your sales team been in a meeting and that customer says, oh, that's great, but we're actually really focused on our small format right now. We only carry half the brands. We don't have all this in play at that particular store. What does this mean for us? Well, with the simulator, you can go in, deselect the brands that aren't in play at that particular channel, essentially create your new base case or starting point, and now from there, any change that you're projected is now extremely relevant and great to support the storytelling for that particular customer. As well, we can take care of some contingency planning. I mentioned off the top that just as we're experimenting with what's happening with the client brand, we can have some educated hypotheses around how the competition might react, especially because we're dealing with these category icons. Often our competition are kind of fast followers in terms of what our iconic brands might be doing in the space. So by anticipating some of that, we can essentially do some wargaming. Okay, if we take price here or start to innovate in this way, what happens if the competition follows?
So anyone here on the client side might know the questions rarely end once the agency has delivered the report, tied it up in a little bow. And especially in the case of this type of project, the sales and the marketing teams just kept coming back with more questions, new ideas. Maybe they needed to pivot from the original strategy as things evolved. But because we had the foresight to build in so many different test variables into our study from a wide range of prices, huge long line of innovation and different formats, we've been able to kind of leverage that simulator and keep going back to it and making changes, rerunning scenarios as our grocery environment has shifted and evolved. We've also, to Marcie's point, been able to actually leverage this in some working sessions with some of our retail partners, which really helps us take them on that journey of learning around driving consumer behavior change and how to best leverage our brands and our innovation to drive growth in their stores. So, this project, it looks like a lot, and it is a decent amount of work to set up. I will not lie on that point. But you come out of it with this tool that's so powerful and so long-lasting, and you're able to use it in so many different ways. We do refresh our innovation strategies every once in a while, but usually, these simulators, they do have a lifespan of a couple of years at least. So we're able to, keep going back to them regularly, which is amazing. Our marketing intelligence and team at Nestlé Canada really strives to be those highly valued strategic partners to the categories and the businesses that we work with. And virtual markets is one of our key tools that really enables us to understand that what drives behaviors in our categories and lead stronger recommendations and greater agility and courage when it comes to some of those business challenges. Leveraging insights in behavioral data, speaking the language of the business, has really led to better integration of consumer insights across our entire cross-functional team in the organization, with even people like from finance and supply and demand incorporating our data into their growth strategies. Having that holistic view of innovation, considering every factor that can shift decision in your favor, is what enables us at Nestlé Canada to be more efficient in the way that we manage our brands and portfolios and focuses our time and our resources behind those changes that will really make a difference to the consumer in the aisle and to our business as a whole. So it's not quite a crystal ball, but it's pretty close. Thank you so much for your time.
We have a few minutes for questions if there's anything that anyone wants to dig into. Yeah, right here.
I guess I'm just wondering, how does your approach differ from traditional assortment modeling approach, where you're looking at the different attributes and substituting out?
Yeah, so I think that the key differentiator here is just the magnitude of change and the scope of change that you can accommodate within a single study. We can certainly dive into certain attributes, and you saw an illustration of some of those today, but really it is being able to bring all those, not just a couple of dozen, but hundreds of different elements together into one project in a way that still feels very easy and intuitive for respondents to really test the waters on some of those strategies. There's another question here, yeah?
Basically, this is referring to what you just call a SKU-based approach, rather than an attribute-based approach. So you're coming out with this SKUs that define. Some things vary, but they define that. That was my question is, so
Yes.
this research, in a lot of ways, we do similar things with discrete choice, where we come up with SKUs and we can do the exact type of thing. So I've done what you have. And it's nice that it has that long shelf life. One of the things that I wanted to point out is you can make it have a longer shelf life if you come back and get another feedback loop, and you would say a year down the road you recalibrate the model. You say, what did you actually do in the market? What did you have? You recalibrate the model, and now you've readjusted. So your second year isn't still 1 year behind, but it's adjusted again. You brought the future closer to where you're.
Yeah, that's what often happens with clients. Well, like it's almost a test and learn. While the projects themselves are quite meaty, there is opportunity to learn from what's worked and what's not. Partnering with Nestlé, we have the benefit of doing this across a number of different categories as well. So there's also learning from adjacent projects and brands as well. It can be recalibrated. Consumers can be revisited as well as the landscape changes. I think every category is a little bit different in terms of the kind of the shelf life here. But when you're starting to see that evidence of really landmark changes, completely new entrants, a new subcategory that perhaps didn't exist a year ago, it might be time to refresh and do a dive back in. Oh, yeah, in the back there.
Could you talk a little bit about models built from scanner data or observed data versus models built from choice data online, and just the benefits of the choice data online and maybe drawbacks versus those other?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last.
Just the benefits and drawbacks of a choice model with online choice data, like survey-based choice data, versus actual scanner data.
Yeah, do you want to speak to that, Laurence? Have you done scanner?
Yeah, I mean, the benefit here is really that combination, and we're leveraging a little bit of both really to kind of get to a better place. And the scanner data looks back. It looks backwards a lot of what's happened and kind of how do we model that into moving forward versus where, when you incorporate the decision-based data here, it helps you really have that more future view. I think I got the stop sign in the back, but if anybody has any additional questions or want to chat, we're available. Thank you so much.